while back, I went and sat under a tree and pondered every possible idea that I might value in life. A lot came to my mind, but nothing stimulated my senses. Suddenly, an apple fell upon my golden-haired head. At that moment, I realized I would write my speech on gravity and introduce Isaac Newton and all of his laws of motion. A few moments later, I recognized I have no knowledge of gravity nor any interest in the topic. I began to think of the apple itself. It seemed to be a juicy matter. Sure, my story of choosing a topic might be a myth, just like the story of Newton getting struck by a gravity-driven fruit. However, this proved to be a far tastier topic than any law of motion. The apple, a revolutionary nourishment, has changed history, culture, and the overall health of mankind over thousands of years. Now, the apple may just seem to be a circular fruit, but its contents might surprise you. If you cut an apple at its equator, you'll find 5 small chambers. Each chamber holds 1 to 2 seeds that shine a lustrous brown. Botanist Michael Pollan bites down into the contents of an apple in his book, The Botany of Desire. Each seed contains a diminutive amount of cyanide for protection, and each seed has different genetic contents. These different genetic contents can create a unique apple tree for each seed planted. Pollan makes the remark, in the case of the apple, the fruit nearly always falls far from the tree. This genetic variability is known as heterozygosity. This allows the apple to adapt to any climate, from New Zealand to Kazakhstan. The apple, also known as the forbidden fruit, was first documented in the biblical story of Adam and Eve, but that's not the only way this juicy plump fruit made its mark in history. As reported by the Institute of Food, the apple originated well over 4,000 years ago in the Middle East. A variety of wild apple tree and crab apple tree known as malus began to spread all across Europe around the time of the Norman conquest of 1066. For the next 300 years, the fruit would be known as a dessert for the rich. Victorian explorers then traded this delectable fruit and began to create orchards and gardens. As for colonial America, tobacco wasn't the only substance being cultivated in areas such as Jamestown, Virginia. Apples were harvested in Jamestown around 1607, but not for eating. In America, the fruit was still very bitter, so they did what Americans do best, create an alcoholic beverage, hard cider. History.com states cider became so popular that it was sometimes used to pay salaries. And Virginian statesman William Fitzhugh once remarked that his orchard of 2,500 trees was more valuable than 15,000 pounds of tobacco. This new alcoholic beverage leads us to the true story of Johnny Appleseed. Johnny Appleseed is a key factor in the culture and history of apples through legend and legacy. He's been portrayed in several shows and stories as an animal lover who had a small orchard, sang hymns, and traveled near and far. The real story might interest the older generation rather than these young children singing his catchy song in classrooms. Johnny Appleseed, also known as John Chapman, traveled with his bitter apples and spread the alcoholic beverage hard cider. He was a hero in a sense, a Dionysus, a fancy Greek name for an individual that creates alcohol out of harvest. He brought alcohol and the Bible to the frontier. Therefore, of course, he's characterized as a famous American and is part of our culture today. His legacy lives on through other metaphorical phrases and symbols in our culture. The apple has shaped American culture by becoming the centerpiece of metaphorical phrases over the centuries. It began in biblical times as a temptation in paradise. Over time, the apple's become the core of modern-day society. Many expressions have developed from the 1800s that have stuck with us to date. Expressions such as, apple of my eye, comparing apples and oranges, how do you like them apples, be as America's apple pie, and the Big Apple has shaped our culture in a fruitful fashion. Now, there are many stories on how New York City got the moniker the Big Apple. One story claims it was based on an average family during the Great Depression of the 1930s. The family was forced to sell apples on the streets to make ends meet, as stated in Mental Floss magazine. Another story claims it was just a way to spiff up New York's image in the early 1900s. Either way, the name stuck and is known worldwide. The apple of my eye, on the other hand, was first, of course, introduced as a biblical saying that then got altered to one of Shakespeare's lyrical strategies. Flower of this purple dye, hit with Cupid's archery, sink in, apple of his eye, from A Midsummer Night's Dream. Shakespeare was comparing the pupil of one's eye to the round marble-like surface of an apple. Today's translation of apple of my eye simply means the one you love or desire the most in life. Apples were referenced in a positive way during every century, and we can see this through metaphorical phrases and historical stories that have evolved over time. Now, the apple isn't just used for a talking piece. If actually eaten quite regularly, the apple can alter one's health in an irrefutable way. An apple a day really can keep the doctor away. In fact, Ben Franklin stated an apple a day keeps the doctors away 250 years ago. Franklin didn't know all the health benefits of an apple when saying this famous quote. That doesn't make him incorrect. In the Institute of Food's research on apples, you can see just how healthy an apple truly is. Apples are low in calories and contain zero fat, cholesterol, and sodium. Around 10% of an apple is a carbohydrate, and 4% of the apple is filled with a plethora of different minerals and vitamins. The remaining 80% is water. Quercetin-rich foods such as apples have been proven to lower chances of artery inflammation, lowering your chances of heart disease. Apples have also been proven to lower chances of cancers, strokes, and diabetes, and if eaten every day, can improve all lung functions. More so, the apple contains glucose, which is a natural way of keeping your body awake all day. This gradual alertness results in zero crashes, so the apple is always a better choice than a cup of coffee. Or if you're in a speech and debate tournament, both should suffice. Lastly, the apple contributes to odontology, the study of teeth. What may seem like a sugary sweet morsel can actually lower a person's chances of tooth decay. This nutritious filled snack is a significant superfood, and if eaten every day, can improve all ways of life. And although this fruit exhibits many factors of beneficial eatings, many people tend to buy apple products over an inexpensive apple. Apple technology is skyrocketing with its simple, catchy company name. There are many stories on why Steve Jobs chose this name for his company. Some speculate that he wanted his association to come before the arcade company Atari in the phone book. Another idea was he was paying tribute to Apple, the music label of the Beatles. This new name and advanced technology spread suddenly worldwide and created enormous revenue. In 2009, the iPhone 4S was worth about 20,000 apples, but weighs about the same as one. America's favorite fruit is seemingly getting replaced by this socially gratifying device. Apple technology isn't the only thing taking the attention away from a real apple. Ancient apple species are nearing extinction, and Adrian Newton is attempting to change this. Newton, not to be confused with Isaac Newton, as stated earlier, is a conservation ecologist. Newton is trying to save the wild ancestors of modern apples, primarily in Central Asia. Several thousand years of selective breeding have mined the diversity that we know today. From the Golden Delicious to Cox's Orange Pippin to the improbably known Winter Banana. Just 10 of the 3,000 known varieties account for more than 70% of the world's production. In woodland areas of Kazakhstan, 44 shrubs and trees are severely endangered out of the 300 in the area. These unique apple species are beginning to become depleted by overgrazing, pests, diseases, timber felling for fuel, and most recently, climate change. Different varieties of apple trees provide for several thousand people in the Middle East. Newton describes these nearing extinct species as an urgent necessity to save. Collecting seeds, raising awareness, and funding nurseries can solve this worldly problem. With all the benefits of an apple, we certainly don't want to see any species disappearing anytime soon. The apple has changed the world significantly over many generations. It has created savvy lingo, historical importance, and has surely kept the doctors away. This nutritious bite has created a new life and has even become a name for profiting technologies. And although people might tend to gravitate towards these new apple products, it might be a smarter choice to pick an actual apple instead. A real apple is unique in creating new tastes and stories worldwide. The next time you go sit under an apple tree, if our generation ever steps outside, I hope you put down your Apple device, forget about all gravitational laws, and bite down on an exquisite apple, before it hits your head, of course. Thank you. Sorry, my time